So not too long ago, I asked the community to share their stories. I want to know from people, the best people out there, the bravest souls, of what happened to you. How did you escape this religion you were a part of? So today, I'm really excited because I've got Shaun here, and he's going to share his experience of being a witness, getting out of it, and ultimately finding truth. And I want to hear his story. And I haven't heard any of this, so I'm excited. Shaun, introduce yourself and just tell the people who you are.
Well, I'm Shaun Freeman. I was a Jehovah's Witness for 30 years and came out last year. So yeah, you're going to have to prompt me a lot, I think. So yeah,
Well, so
but
how
that's
did you?
basically me. I'm an IT consultant.
Okay,
So yeah,
awesome.
and and yeah, it's been a bit of a wild ride.
So what got you into it in the first place?
Oh, that's going back quite a long way. So yeah, well, I was into drugs at the time. So I was doing quite a lot of drugs, marijuana, LSD, coke. Um, so pretty messed up life. And we, I was with a friend, and we had a witness who was living in the house, and he started sharing Bible verses, and he sort of like, well, he got us into a Bible study with him. He was schizophrenic as well, which was a bit of a mix. But so it got a bit interesting at times. But I looked at the Bible because I've had a long sort of feeling that there was God, throughout my whole life. I've been disillusioned from a lot of the religious leaders that I'd been associated with, and seeing some sort of hypocrisy, and that sort of put me off, like in the Church of England and things like that.
Mm.
And also with some evangelists that used to come to the school and Christians that I used to talk to. And yeah, so there was always this back sort of feeling that there was God there somewhere, and I would talk to God a lot of the time, and I would philosophize on things. And yeah, and so when it came to, I think it was about 1991. So what was I, about 22 ish, 20, 22, 23. Yeah, about 23. Have to remember because we didn't celebrate
That's
birthdays
right.
for 30
You
years.
forget those
So
important facts.
yeah, that's right, absolutely. Yeah, so and I started looking into the Bible again. And one of the main hooks for me at that time was a magazine in 1991. It was an Awake magazine that was issuing about the United Nations, and it was basically flagellating the United Nations. And I was all for that because I was very into being an anarchist
Mhm.
against all this sort of thing. So I was very pacifistic, and it it sort of played to my sort of desire, and I thought this is great, and it played in with Revelation, and so I
Mm.
started looking into sort of Revelation, as Jehovah's Witnesses were back then. They were studying the Revelation Climax book, I think for the first time, because we did actually go through it 3 times, I remember. So yeah, all in a very short space of time.
Hmm.
But yeah, so I came in Jehovah's Witnesses then on the back of the Revelation Climax book, which was a book that fascinated me, and it was all prophecy that fascinated me. So yeah, and so yeah, the good thing about that period of time was I was getting off drugs, and so that's when I look back, I do sort of think, what were the good things I could get out of it?
Mm.
And one of the good things was that I came off drugs and I sort of cleaned up a lot, and sort of sorted my life out a little bit. And then I was 1992. I was in the November. I was baptized down in North London
Hmm.
Assembly, as one of Jehovah's Witnesses.
So how long from your original reading till baptism? Like 2, 3 years?
No, no,
Oh, it was
no,
much quicker than that.
much quicker than that. I'm My brain works really fast, so when I start reading things, I can see where the logic's going, or
Okay,
in
gotcha.
this case, the false logic.
Hmm.
And I suppose, within 6 months, I wanted to be baptized,
Oh,
and
wow.
they put me off, because I was getting quite friendly with a JW lady.
Whoopsie.
Before was baptized, and they were trying to separate us, basically.
Ah,
Yeah, and they didn't want us to be courting before I was baptized, as in I was a worldly man,
of
uh,
course. Yeah.
and didn't know if I was. One of the things what the elders had said to my wife was, "You don't know what he will do to you," you know.
I guess
Yeah.
that crossing that barrier from not
Mm.
baptized to baptized,
Yeah.
immediately you were somehow not more morally superior. Oh
Yeah,
dear.
that's right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've heard stories of people getting baptized because they wanted to date somebody, and
Yeah.
it just flabbergasts me. Why
Yeah.
would you? It's supposed to be about giving your life to Christ and
Mm.
submitting to God,
Yeah.
not because you want to date
No,
someone. But
it
yeah,
wasn't the case with me. I thought I was submitting myself to God, you see. So, but I was getting very close to this, to my wife, who became my wife.
hmm,
um,
nice.
and she, because I was helping her out quite a lot, because low, she was in low income, so I was helping her with shopping, and taking her shopping, because no one else would take her shopping, and I wasn't baptized, so I'd take her shopping. It's the sort of thing you do, that's, as I was reading the Bible, that's what you do. And so, and I would spend a lot of time with her talking, and we got to know each other, and we got to see that we had so much more in common, because she had a similar background to me.
Mm.
And she was a little bit older than me, so it was something that the elders didn't want us to be pursuing. They did put a lot of restraints. They stopped me being baptized because of it, on that bit, and then put it off for another 4 months.
That just I'm always just surprised when I hear that. Like the eunuch said, "What prevents me from getting
Yeah,
baptized?" And
yeah,
here you are. I want to get baptized. No, 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 not yet. It's in
yeah,
Acts 16, they're baptized within the hour, and no, this
yeah.
one takes a
No,
year.
no,
Wow.
I had to go through like 150 questions or something before being allowed to be baptized by 3 different elders.
Uh, I don't want to. I don't want to. It's so sad because I don't want to poke fun, and
No,
it,
no, I
I
don't either, but yeah,
yeah. I just gave a talk on baptism at my
yeah,
church, and I told people like, yeah, you should be able to get it quick. I understand the question here and there, like, you sure you know
mm,
what you're doing? Like, you're not doing this for a girl, are you?
yeah.
But when you'd say, no, I'm giving my life to Christ. Okay, what else is there? You're good. Off you go. Get in the
Yeah,
tub.
that's right. Absolutely. Because I didn't understand all that. But one of the things that I was thinking about, at the time, was that I just wanted to do what's right in God's eyes. And what I was learning everything from the JWs, and I was being told, everything outside what we call Christendom
Hmm.
is bad. They're all lies. Everything that you were ever taught was lies, and that was feeding into a bit of paranoia that I had anyway,
Hmm.
from and sort of bias that I had, from some sort of bad apples that I'd come across anyway, and which you get across in all sort of walks of life anyway.
Cow.
But yeah, it fed in. So I was getting told that we were everything I was told about Christianity was basically a lie. So we got the cross. We went through, what was I studying? The Paradise book. So the other no, it's the red one. I've got to throw my mind back because it's out of print now. You Can Live Forever in Paradise Earth.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Nice thick book.
They really do such a good job at painting everyone else as false. And I would say they do a better job of painting everyone else false than they do of painting themselves true.
Yeah.
And I can't, it always boggles my mind. I don't sit in a normal church and have to hear, you know why Islam's not true? Or do you know why the Mormons aren't true? Like, no one does that. Maybe you might get one sermon a year on it, but.
Yeah. So I was learning all the, what they call the lies that Christianity teaches. So so I was sort of learning that the cross was a lie, pagan, and all birthdays, Christmas, all that you can't celebrate because it's all pagan. All holidays except for anniversaries were pagan. Oh, what is it? And so when I became a witness, when I was baptized, well, just before that actually, I was sort of saying to my mum, I'm not celebrating my birthday anymore, which really upset her. And because she likes doing all that, because it's all a family sort of thing, because the way I was raised was all that in that way. And then when it came to the holidays, so Christmas, I said, I won't come to you on the Christmas day, but I'll come to you on Boxing Day. Sort of thing. And my mum gave me a Christmas dinner, which was because I was vegan at the time. So she gave me a Christmas dinner. So she saved my Christmas dinner for the Boxing Day and gave me a Christmas dinner.
That was okay.
Yeah, that was okay. Yeah. I don't think I was baptized at that time, but yeah. But when I was, so I got really into it very quickly, because I was reading a lot of their literature, and this is what I do. If I study hard and quickly, so I will read lots of books, and I just take in the information and then rethink and then think on it. So I'd be so what did I do? Creation book I read that they published, and which gave me more of an idea that there is a God, and all that. So give their credit where credit is due. They got me back to believing in God, even though it is a funny way of doing it. But yeah. And I sincerely believed that what they were teaching was the truth of things. So I completely went along with it. I suppose coming off drugs, being on drugs and coming off drugs at the same time, it doesn't really help. And I didn't really, I didn't go around the churches and see what they were teaching, see if what the witnesses are saying was true. So
you're seeing a change in your life, right? Hey, I'm off drugs and I'm learning things. Like, this has to be it. It's making sense. Right. I feel that. Yeah.
Yeah. And everyone, you go to the Kingdom Hall and everyone loves you and everything. It's all great, it's all sort of feeling. But I have, even though that people come to me and I like being around people, I have an anxiety in crowds and things like that. So it was really difficult to be in crowds like the Kingdom Hall. I found, because we were having the small groups in houses at the time as well on a Tuesday, before they'd done away with all that. And I found it better doing that because we're in like a little group of 6 or 7 or 8. And it was really nice. I had really long hair at the time as well before I was baptized. So it was all the way down my back. I used to get teased about that by one chap. He said, "Oh, where you go to get your hair cut?" And my wife, before she became my wife, she said, "I like it like that." She said, and she did actually. She did like it a little bit longer. So she's a little bit of a rebel, because she was a witness for 50 years. So yeah, a little bit longer than me.
So was she born in?
No, she wasn't. She came in, like I said, she was a little bit older.
Okay, that's okay. Gotcha. That's
Yeah.
right.
So she had a family when I met her. And she had raised them as witnesses as a single parent. And it's screwed them up, basically. And we've had a lot of family problems because of it, in that way. And when just before, because we started, so I'll go back into where I got married. So, well, I got baptized first. And this is where we couldn't understand, May and I, because my wife's name was May. May and I couldn't understand this bit because we weren't allowed to sit together at the Kingdom Hall because we wanted the court. And because I wasn't baptized, I wasn't allowed to sit with her. So I got baptized down in North London Assembly Hall, Bowes Road it was called. And once I got baptized, an elder came up to me and said, "Why don't you go and sit next to May?" As soon as I was baptized. I can see your face on already.
I'm just
Yeah.
It gives me such a headache. This is not how normal things work.
No.
And I don't think they realize that.
No.
They go through it like,
Yeah.
oh, this is common. No, it's not. It's not common. It's bizarre behavior.
Yeah, but it's common in witness culture.
Well,
That's
yeah.
the thing. So you just accept it. A lot of the time, you just sort of accept it because you think what you're doing is for God anyway. Because I've had to explain this before to someone. You think you're doing something that you're doing it for God, and you don't realize what you're doing is wrong in certain things, and so yeah, I was baptized. So then I went and sat next to May, and we carried on our courtship. And then it was about 4 months later we got married, because we didn't see the point in hanging about.
I like it. I dig it. That's right. Sometimes go for it. I like it.
Yeah, go for it. Because we were, once I was baptized, now this is the thing that I've had sort of religious experiences through my life anyway. And when I was baptized, I had a religious experience at the time of my baptism. And it was really strange because it's just like when I was baptized, when I went to sleep, I had a dream, and it was a dream where I had Jesus presented me to the Father, and that was something that I kept hold of, and I didn't tell many witnesses about this, so this is now telling everyone. But I told a friend of mine later about it, and he'd been a friend since I was 11 years old, and he was raised as a witness, and I knew him at school as a witness. And I told him about it when he came over with a circuit overseer for a visit, and he went, "Really?" Sort of thing. He was quite amazed. by it, because I'm very open about sort of sharing those sort of things, but I don't always share them, you know. But yeah, so I told my wife about the experience I had, and she thought it was really nice too. But that's what I felt. I felt as though I was dedicating myself to God, and it wasn't to an organization.
Nice.
So I always wanted to do what was right for the Lord, you know. Even though I was getting it sort of wrong, my heart was with God and not with men. And so really, we sort of started the journey going forward after that. And so May and I started courting. We should have seen all these red flags going up all over the shop here. And we were talking to the elders about wanting to have a Kingdom Hall wedding, because May never had one with a previous marriage, and she wanted to have one. It was sort of important to her. And so we applied, and there were three other couples that in that year that wanted to be married. So that was 1993. So I was baptized in November 1992, and May and I were married in 1993 in February. So that's how quick it was, because we'd already got to know each other very well. And we had actually split the congregation from wanting to get married. There were the elders on the elder body were split about saying that there was like half of them wanted to give us a Kingdom Hall wedding, and half of them didn't, for some reason. We don't know what.
Oh, you don't know. I was curious.
But I've got a feeling, because there was one particular elder. I don't want to mention his name because he's died now, and he also became a very dear friend of mine. Even in the witnesses, I still regard him as a very dear friend. But he was quite dictatorial at the time. And he was like, come from the old school where the elders, there was one elder that took care of the whole congregation, and when the body came, you always had that one elder that held sway. And he was a bit sort of the tough one sort of thing, old school. That's it, just do this way, you know, like mother tells us to do it this way. I realized that early on that the organization Jehovah's Witnesses was referred to as mother at times, certain times.
That's something I didn't know about. Wow.
Yeah,
It never ceases to amaze me.
Yeah, that's an old one. That's very cultural.
I guess
Not
Jerusalem is our mother. I guess, is that where they're getting that from Galatians 4?
The organization, yeah, Jerusalem is our mother. Jerusalem above is our mother, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, this is they took the organization as being the mother.
Right.
It goes back to Frederick Franz teaching back in the 1950s. It's in a watchtower somewhere about it. I did unearth it in my studies. get in there somewhere. And it sounded a bit more like the Roman Catholic matriarchs sort of teaching.
A little bit.
Yeah, a little bit.
More than a little.
Yeah. Yeah, I downplay things, don't worry. And he wrote most of the articles back then. He was the voice of the organization. He was the only one that seemed to have much education in anything, even though it wasn't great.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they wouldn't give us a Kingdom Hall wedding, and they said, well, wait, and we give it some time, because we want Shaun to sort of like, find his way, and want to give him time to make sure that he's not just after you, sort of thing. And so we would have various consultations with two elders about conduct and things like this, and we've got to wait, we've got to have a chaperone, even though, what was I was 24 at the time, and my wife, she was 50 at the time. So we had 26 years between us.
Wow.
Yeah. And they didn't like that, you see. So
yeah, that's quite a range. So no wonder.
that is, yeah. But yeah, and one of the elders said to me that trying to stop me from marrying her. He said, "Well, why didn't you go after, go for the younger ones?" But I had nothing in common with anyone. but my wife, no one seemed to sort of, I didn't fancy any of them. It was
what the heart wants. I mean,
yeah, yeah. It comes down to a combination of things, doesn't it? When you're attracted to someone, it's looks, it's personality, it's all sorts of things. But May and I just clicked, you see. So we got on so well. It was almost like, we'd known each other for a very long time, or that we were meant to know each other. That's how it sort of felt, sort of thing.
I know the feeling. It's good. It's good feeling.
Yeah. So anyway, one elder told me that that one day I'll wake up to an old woman. I said, at the time I didn't tell him, but I thought, yeah, but you will too.
Yeah, like, well, I'm sorry, am I supposed to like wake up next to a young woman? Is that my whole point? Is like,
that's
what's
right.
I hope to do that. If I'm not really in love, if I only want to wake up next to a young woman the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Phew.
Yeah, and one of the things I used to say to him was, because we were very much in the 90s with the generation teaching still, the old school generation teaching that we had, where the 1914 generation that saw the sign of Christ's presence, or the World War One, would not pass away. And I said, well, we've only got about 10 years of this system of things, and it'd be all over. So age doesn't matter, We'll stop. And age doesn't matter anyway. So that's how I've always felt. And I don't think you like that, but because May and I we weren't conformists in lots of different ways. And she used to get quite a lot of flack as well. We had one elder who was our group overseer, group elder, and he was particularly making it difficult for my wife before we were married, because she was doing a cleaning job to get by, and she had a son, and he didn't like the son because he didn't get baptized. He wasn't following Jehovah's Witnesses. He didn't want to do it, and so May needed his help to do the job, because she was getting ill in the way of, she had MA at the time, so she'd get really tired, really exhausted. And so he said, well, I can't have your son working with you. He either doesn't do it with you, or you don't do the job. That's it. So yeah,
I mean, that still is mind-boggling. It's just a job. It's someone helping. Since where in Scripture does it say, "Oh no, to get help, everyone needs to be a believer in the exact same thing and united on that exact same subject. Otherwise, don't ask for help." And shouldn't you want, as this organization that is big on evangelism, that wants to go door knocking and stand by carts to get the message out, but then they're going to exclude somebody that's the son of this woman? That's crazy.
Yeah, because May did pioneer at times. So she did do pioneering. So so that's one thing that she wanted to do. She always wanted to be a missionary. from when she was little. She went to a congregational church before she got involved in nefarious things. She'll keep quiet on that one.
Yeah.
I don't have her permission to say. So yeah. So we started off our married life in a bit of a controversy. And we had the gossip of the congregation saying it would only last 18 months. So yeah, and these were meant to be the spiritual people that were saying this, you know.
Yeah, they do know gossip is a sin, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Well,
much.
JW's like gossip. Come
Yeah,
on.
so I've heard. It's the it's not really loving to wish and hope for the worst in a relationship.
Yeah,
Like if you
yeah,
believe that marriage is this covenant between you and God, you would want that to last
that's
and
right.
not gossip. Oh, it's not going to.
Yeah.
It's a little
So,
eh.
yeah. So we weren't allowed at JW wedding, so we went and married anyway. We just went down to the registry office, got married, and we had a JW elder who did our wedding talk in a private home from another brother at the time opened up. And there were some brothers and sisters we put out for invitations, and they refused to come because they didn't agree with it. So it's their
Yeah.
choice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You think
So
that was all because of the age difference, or was there some other reasons behind that, you think?
I think there was a bit of age difference, but there was also, which dissipated over the years, actually. It got better. May had, after a few years, wrote a letter to the circuit overseer complaining about all this because it bothered her. And so one of the elders, who actually is one of the nicer elders that I've ever come across. So, and I still regard him as a friend, even though he doesn't really talk to me very much anymore.
Yeah.
But he encouraged her to write a letter to get it out, and she sent it off to the body of elders to put her grievances to the body of elders. But she also sent a copy to the circuit overseer as well. And one of the elders said, who was really nice. There was a couple of really nice elders in our congregation there. We had for a JW congregation, it was a good congregation, put it that way. It was fairly liberal in lots of different ways. But he said, thank you for your letter. He went to me, he said, thank you for your letter, and smiled because he loved it, because he loved sort of like when things were getting told off and things hadn't moved, because he was a bit of a controversial person when he came into the congregation himself, and he stayed with it and things changed a little bit. But one elder didn't like it, you know, and made his voice known, and the circuit overseer had go in there. He was a fairly good circuit overseer as well, and he sorted things out on that level, and things did start to change in the congregation after that. It got more liberal, more sort of not so culty in some ways, even though you don't realize that it is, and it still is. But it got easier, put it that way. It got a lot easier. But from year to year, I would find myself like at the memorial that JWs do, that I was uneasy about passing the emblems. And I did it. I passed the emblems on. I didn't take the bread or the wine, but I felt guilty about it, and I didn't tell anyone. Yeah. So I'm being convicted, you know. Yeah. And my wife talked to an elder about it, and she said, I feel as though I should take the emblems, and he sort of talked her out of it. Yeah.
Rejecting the body and blood of Christ. That's so weird.
Yeah.
Oh, you don't want that.
No,
But
you
don't
don't want.
it's
No.
hard to read John 6 and then think that you shouldn't have it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just that always upsets me, because I do treat most witnesses as
Yeah.
victims of
Yeah.
this, and they're being told by these people that, oh no, you don't want that. Like, no, that's
Mm.
that's the new covenant. That's the gospel message is what we have
Yeah.
here, and
Yeah.
you're informing your members that they should reject.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
yeah,
the JWs are not in the new covenant. That's the thing.
yeah,
Most JWs are not in the new covenant, and they know that.
which is still mind
Yeah.
boggling to me of why you wouldn't want that, and even the
Yeah, and
reasons
they
behind it
don't.
just
They
doesn't make
don't
sense.
want it.
Yeah.
That's the thing. I've talked to some JWs down where I live. I'll get onto that. I'm trying to put some sort of people that know me know I diverge. I sort of go off in tangents. So where do you get to? Yeah, so May and I were just put our heads down. We were doing our thing. We were reading our Bibles, you know, well, we reading the JW Bible, getting on, doing the Watchtower study. We were fairly happy going to the congregations, going to the conventions, the assemblies, and we were quite happy. We kept ourselves to ourselves most of the time. And we had one wrinkle, was that May's daughter was disfellowshipped. So that caused a lot of problems in the family, because she was, because two of her daughters got baptized. One slipped away quietly, and one was disfellowshipped. And so we couldn't have any communication or any fellowship with the one that is fellowship, but we could have fellowship with the one that slipped away, who was doing worse things than what.
How does that make sense?
Yes, it makes sense. Of course, it makes sense.
Uh,
So yeah. So, but eventually, about 2001, as time went on, we started doing craft work. So we got a little hobby going with crafts and things, because I wasn't working at the time, and we thought we're trying to get some cottage industry going. And so we got quite good at doing crafts. We were doing beadwork, and we started selling that, and it's went down quite well. And we were selling. We eventually got to sell beads and bead related things on the internet when that came up, and we did all right with that.
all right.
But
So you're in now for 30 years. Well, 30 years you said you were in.
yeah,
And then you finally, yeah, it was so, yeah, I want to kind of get to that. It's the kind of the way out. Was it like a slow kind of like downhill, or was it like a instant drop?
yeah, some of it's been a slow burn, and some of it's been a sort of like a pull out quickly. The slow burn is that in probably about 2015, I was looking on the internet, overtly, and I'd come across Dr. James White's his apologetic debates, and I came across the one that he did with Stafford.
Yeah.
And I thought James White did a really good job.
He did. Yeah, he did.
He
Very
did,
good.
I couldn't fault him. That's the thing, and it made me uncomfortable as a JW. So yeah, but that all got pushed on the burner, because we'd gone past the new teaching of the generation teaching, where it changed in 2012.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, and it was the faithful and discreet slave teaching changed then as well, ish. So what I was told about the faithful and discreet slave was that it was all the 144,000 who were Christ's brothers. They take the bread and the wine. They go up in heaven. That's it. Job done. But then in about 2012, it changed to only the governing body. And part of that teaching, which actually slipped by me, was that our salvation depends on our obedience to them. And that was one of the lines in the Watchtower of 2012.
I believe it is 2012.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've referenced that one before.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, there's nothing more culty than that.
And so I'm sort of like occasionally looking on the YouTubes, listening to things, and resisting it, put it that way. But in 2020, when COVID hit, we no longer went to the meetings, of course. We all went on Zoom, and for 2 years we were on Zoom. It gave me a little bit more time because we weren't going out on the ministry. So I wasn't talking to brothers and sisters on the ministry. And so we started doing Zoom ministry meetings where we would do writing. And I started doing a blog as my ministry. Yeah, as you do.
Why not? Right.
Yeah, why not? And so I started that off. I started off with like an article called Keep on the Watch, which basically is just sort of like, just trying to encourage. But I wasn't making it witnessy. That was the thing. I was making it more sort of like not trying to make it witnessy.
Just Bible-y,
Yeah,
if you
just
will.
Bible sort of thing. Yeah. And make it a bit generic. And in my about page, I said that I was going to just use the Bible and then come in. And if I don't like the teaching, then maybe I'm going to have to change my teaching. And I read that out to May, and she said, "You're brave." She said,
"Yeah,
yeah." So that was in. I started that a bit later than 2020 because I was having a crisis, really, because of COVID, and didn't know what was happening. And because we had Stephen Lett come on saying on the first broadcast, I think it was, this is the last of the last of the last day.
The last days of the last days. This is it, y'all.
Yeah, this is it. Yeah. And that sort of went, I don't know about this.
I've heard this before. Wait a minute.
Yeah. This sounds a bit sort of wacky a little bit, and then we started getting articles in the Watchtower saying we must obey, even if it sounds illogical or it doesn't sound right or reasonable. You just got to do as you're told, basically. And I looked at that and I thought, that doesn't sound right.
Because it's not.
No. And I read that out to May. She said, that doesn't sound right either. So we just left it a little bit, sort of thing. And so from, I think it was in October 2021, I posted the first blog on Keep on the Watch. And then I started doing that a little bit more, and I then went on to a new article called "The Earth, Will It Be a Paradise?" That sort of thing. And then I went into 5 Keys to Unlock the Bible. I was trying to do this for a ministry, and I was counting my time when I was doing it.
Why not?
Why not?
Smart man.
And then something weird happened after that, because it was after the convention in 2021. So after June 2021, July-ish or August, over that time, we had the convention over the internet, basically, for the first time. And we had David Splain come on, and it was the apostate talk.
I'm familiar.
And he said that we shouldn't just believe the apostates. And I didn't know what he was talking about too much, but he was talking about the media and which spurred me on to look a little bit more into that, because he was saying about if the media say something against Jehovah's Witnesses, then don't believe it, sort of thing. But look at look at what the witnesses are saying, and then he said also, don't believe everything. Just look into the word, look into what the words mean and things when he was doing your study and things like that. Sorry, it's a bit disjointed, but
No, I feel you.
I took him literally to look in and to find the truth of things, to look back. And so I started doing a history of Jehovah's Witnesses study.
So this is like late 2020 in COVID, and then Splain has just come out. I want you all to really look into it, and you, Shaun, go heck yeah. Well, I got to do what he says, so go for it.
I'm being a good JW. I'm doing as I'm told.
That's right, and counting them hours at the same time. So what's the first thing that like blows your mind, or so you get into the history?
Yeah, well, I didn't start getting into history straight away there. I actually cracked open a Bible and started reading it and not using the New World Translation. I gave myself permission to use. I started off with the easy to read version because I wanted something easy to read. And I was reading Acts for the first time. I was also praying to God in a very different way to what the witness he taught, the witness as I was taught as a witness. And what blew my mind at the time was it was an article. It was a passage on when the Apostle Paul was leaving Ephesus and he was going to Jerusalem, and he talked about the grace of the good news. And because I was reading a different Bible, I came across his word grace for the first time. And I wanted to know what it was. So I started looking it up on BibleHub.com.
Good source.
Yeah. And then I started looking into it and looking into the Greek meanings of it. And what I found out actually blew my mind on it. I wrote an article about it as well because it completely changed everything for me. Because when I learned what grace was, it wasn't this undeserved kindness, as the witnesses put it, and
right.
It actually disgusted me once I sort of got to that point. But I sort of prayed to God, saying, how could we? I was doing it as a community prayer. How could we get it so wrong? Grace, because we were taught we got to work for our salvation. We got to do the ministry and things. And when I learned grace was a gift that you can't work for, there's nothing we can do. It's a gift. It's a blessing that comes from the Father, and it's through Jesus Christ, and it's the blessing of life. And that completely did me in. And as I was praying to the Father about that, all I can say was that I had this incredible feeling of love that came in me. And it just was so overwhelming, the experience of it, that it left me absolutely devastated. I was emotionally wrought by it, in a way that I was just crying, and I couldn't stop. It was just floods of tears coming out of me, and all I could feel was this love coming through me and out of me, and all I could describe that down to as the Spirit of God, the Holy Spirit. And I sort of eventually got myself together because I had to go and get my mum, because it was mid-COVID. So I had to go and get my mum to take her shopping because she had nothing. So I had to sort of like splash myself and all this sort of thing. And I took her shopping. When I got home, I sat May down because by this time she got really ill. So I was looking after her. I'd been looking after her for 15 years. And she'd got very dependent on me in that way. So I was doing everything around the house and caring for her. And she was in the bedroom. I sort of sat down and I said to her, "I've got to tell you something." She thought the worst, I think.
Like what? Well, what do you have to tell me?
What's he going to say now? It could be anything, this guy. So I sat down and I told her of my experience, and she said, "What does this mean?"
Good
And I said,
question.
"I don't know." And she said, "What has God got in store for you?" And I said, "I don't know." She accepted the experience just like that.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
And she sort of, but the thing was that everything changed for me. Every time I looked at a witness sort of thing, witness magazine, I started looking at it in the light of the doing context in the Bible. So when they do a proof text, I contexted it, and thinking that doesn't say that,
That's the best way to start. So many I know
Yeah.
started that way of,
Yeah.
wait a minute, that verse does not mean that's
No.
completely unrelated. That has nothing to do with this. Well, why do you even put this in here? Right.
Yeah. So I started giving answers in the midweek meeting, and people started praising me for my answers because they started getting a little bit better because they weren't going down the witness line
Yeah.
a little bit. And they were very Christ-centered as well. And my prayers became very Christ-centered. And so I was asked to pray for for a ministry, and it was very Christ-centered. And I was never asked again. Put it this way.
I can't imagine why. You made
Yeah.
it governing body centered. You'd be asked, "Hey, can you do this every single week?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I started writing blogs now, and the blog article started to change, and it started in January the 12th. Sort of, I did one January 12th, 2022, and I titled that "How I Have Been Crucified with Christ," and I wrote that as a witness. And so, because I was starting to undo things, like I was reading this book.
Okay. Yeah. That'll do it.
That'll do it. Yeah. So I'm reading Justin Martyr, and he was explaining about the cross and the shape of the cross, and I think,
Yep.
hang about.
Well, that's not what I was told. Wait a minute.
Yes, that's right. Absolutely. So I accepted the cross. I completely, went on to that, and I told May, I said, Jesus died on the cross, and she said, "Of course he did."
It's like, wait,
What?
well, you were going to tell me? I believe this for 30 years. You've been holding back. What?
Yeah. The funny thing was, she was reverting to. She had started reverting to her Christian upbringing from the Congregational church that she'd been, and she couldn't believe that the witnesses didn't teach that Jesus. She thought that witnesses taught Jesus died on the cross. And I said, "No, they teach that he died on a stake." She said, "No, he didn't. He didn't die on a stake."
It's one of those things where when you step outside of it, you go, why was this even? Why did they even do it? I mean, they do it to paint Christians as pagans. I mean, clearly, but it's such a historical fact. And to say, "Oh, that really didn't happen," or it's like there's tangible evidence. I mean, not just
Mm,
in the linguistics of, but through manuscript evidence and history. Like
mm,
it's just a silly argument to have, but they only do it just so they can hit
yeah,
Christians as, look, every time you see that cross, they're actually Satan worshipers. So
that's right.
yeah.
Yeah. But not the funny thing, because it wasn't, it was, this is the start of my anxiety now. I started, so about now, I'm starting to get anxious.
Hmm.
And this anxiety is causing me a lot of mental problems and a lot of physical problems as well, because I had a chat with it. May kept on saying, you've got to talk with the elders, because we were going through the Pure Worship book at the time, and it was infuriating me because we were going through Gog of Magog in Ezekiel, and how this is going to be a coalition of nations going to attack. And I said, and there was a conspiracy article up on the web, on the jw.org, and I said, we're conspiracy theorists, you know. And I said to May, this is winding me up. This study here is winding me
I
up,
bet.
because it's just supposition.
Yeah.
It's just conjecture. We don't know what's going to happen. You know, this or this. This is, this tying this into Revelation and Ezekiel, and they're saying this is all happening to the witnesses is replacement theology. You know, it was really winding me up at that time. I was getting angry, and I was sort of like, when we were on the Zoom meetings for the meeting, I'd start that and I'd sort of shout at them. So, and May used to say, well, just say it then. Yeah, there should be no problem to just say it, you know. If you know, and I said one of the anxieties was that I was going to lose May, because she was
Yeah.
still witness orientated, and I'd stopped being a witness orientated by then. And I was willing to stay a JW until she passed away. And it was getting very difficult for me, though. That's the thing. And so I would talk to her, because she's like my best friend, so I'd just talk to her anyway. And she would say, you know, if you believe this, just say it. It's, you know, there should be no problem saying it in the congregation. No, not a problem. And I had to sit down with her, because we were coming up for the memorial, and I said, I believe I should take the emblems. And she said, what, you believe that, you know, you're one of the anointed? I said, no, not in that way. I said, I believe we should all take the emblems. I think we've got it wrong. And that sort of hackled her a little bit. But what I did was I said, we've got to read the Bible on this, and we've got to read it not in the New World Translation. And so I used the ESV for that, because I started reading the ESV, and I was using that in the congregation as well, the ESV. So every time I quoted something, it was from the ESV. I sort of so I sat down with May with all the, I did a little A4 sheet with harmony of scriptures, gospels, and Corinthians, and we read through the harmonies of it, and then we read the Bible, and then we read John 6 as well, and she came to the conclusion that we should take the emblems.
Awesome.
It was difficult conversation, though.
I bet. Yeah.
It just happened like that. Yeah, it was a bit sort of like, yeah, we prayed about it, and I said, we've got to ask questions, and whatever we say, it, you know, if we're asking the question, we don't get angry, we don't sort of get upset, we just ask it, see if it's true in the Bible, and if it's not true in the Bible, we discard the question. If it is true in the Bible, then we accept it as truth. And she said, okay. And we had a bit of a rough time doing this. It was awkward to begin with because it was off script, but I was trying to take a spiritual lead with her, because what I was reading in the Bible said that I had to do that. I had to make sure that my family were worshipping in the right way. And so after that, yeah, she saw that we needed to do that. So come Memorial Day, we did it on the Zoom. We turned the video off. We didn't want to do it completely publicly, but we had a friend of ours, and I had been meeting her in Sainsbury's when I was doing my shopping. It was coincidental. She'd been praying that she would meet someone, and I'd met her, and she is an old friend of ours, but she was disfellowshipped 20 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And so we had nothing to do with her, but then saw her, and I was meant to shun her. And I went, "Oh, hi," and gave her a hug.
And she's a little shocked.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah. But we had a good conversation, and so we invited her over to partake with the emblems as well, and my mum as well, and as they did the memorial, we took the emblems at home, and then when we took the emblems, May completely changed after that. It was almost like a born again experience for her.
That's awesome.
It is. She said, I feel different," she said. It was almost, and from then she was really, really more supportive than ever with me, and what I was finding out and doing, because I'd really gone heavily into the history of Jehovah's Witnesses. I'd listened to a couple of people like Brian Pickett's, even though I don't agree with all their theology. What they were undoing was good enough for me, exposing, because he's an ex-elder from JW, and I'd accepted the Trinity, you see, so by then, because I'd sort of like been studying John 1 to 18, and then seeing that Jesus been called God in other places, and it hit me that this, Jesus is called God, and this Father is called God. There's two here. So how do I reconcile this?
Is the Bible broke, or is this thing called the Trinity really a thing?
Yeah. So one of the things that May and I started reading the theology, so we read that.
I have it too. Great book. Great book.
And at the time, we were also reading Martin Luther.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I haven't read that one. I know of it, but I haven't read it yet.
Yeah, but basically, it's just the story of Martin Luther. And as we were reading that, I said to May, I'd stop and I would expound on it, and I'd say, the Holy Roman Church here, it sounds a bit like JW's. It was a little
bit. Yeah. There's some comparisons.
But yeah, so there was lots of revealings in lots of different ways in that way. And I would come in and overturn JW doctrine. I would say, I've just overturned 1914. Things like that, because I'd went into Rutherford's teachings in the 1934 Watchtower, on the great crowd, and the other sheep, great crowd doctrine, which I overturned. And when I said to May, I did a study on it, and I said to her that the crowd that's in Revelation 7 verse 9, they're before the throne in heaven. They're in heaven. And this is what we're told is the great crowd. And then there's further down, they are in the temple, so yeah, it's sort of, it hit home, and so May was starting to think really hard about that. She said, so what happens when we die then? And I
Big
said,
question.
yeah, I said, I don't know. So let's find out, So
I can recommend you one guy who died and came back to life. He might know what happens.
yeah, that's right. But yeah, so we'd started thinking about that, so that was an ongoing thing that we'd started doing. But one of the things that I was invited out onto a study with an elder over the Zoom with somebody that was wanting to be a JW. And it was talking about Bible and Bible study. And so I said to him, well, you've got to, I can't help myself. You've got to look into different Bibles, different translations. I said a good one to look at is BibleHub.com. It's got all the lexicons there, and you can for free, and you can read through those, and that would be a good resource. And so he took all that on board, and I said, because what you got to do is make sure that what's being said in this book here is correct, and read things in context. I said, so you get a passage, read it in context. And so the elder, after the study, came on and he told me off. And he said, just stick to the New World Translation. We don't want to start confusing people.
Yeah, it's logical advice to here's a whole bunch of translations, research yourself and read things in context. No. Don't do that. Only read our Bible, only read the Watchtower. Don't do anything like that doesn't raise any red flags for someone mentally. Oh, wow.
Yeah, nothing will. But yeah, so I started doing that. So I got told off for doing that. And then two elders wanted to meet with me, and I said, and they said, can we, have a shepherding call with you, and they didn't talk about having it with May, and I said that'd be great. May and I haven't had the shepherding call for a couple of years. That'd be great to have one together. So I got May on board straight away. I would never have her not being there with me and two elders and being told off or anything like that. But they didn't tell us off there. But I offered my grievances with what I was learning with the Lord's Supper mainly, and I said it was distressing me. It was causing me great pain that the Watchtower, the governing body, I would say, the governing body were keeping this away from everyone, and everyone should be taking it. And they didn't agree, of course, but it was bringing me to tears that they were just keeping this away. And I said, it's there in the Bible, and it's causing me real pain, and to see everyone. He said, well, we don't stop anyone taking it. I said, but you do. You do, because, there's articles written that strongly discourage people from taking it. Only, and we had, what's it, that crazy one, Stephen Lett.
That crazy one here, you're not narrowing it down.
Sorry, I might get litigation on that. But he on that, I think it might have been that year, but he was talking about how do you know if you should take the emblems? How do you know if you're anointed? All this sort of thing. So they basically strongly say you only can take it if you're anointed in this special way that only anointed people would know, but don't ask them how they know.
Right. It's just based on a feeling, totally not fact. And don't ask them how they did it. They just do it because.
Yeah. And read Romans 8 tells it all. So you read Romans 8 and you say, yeah, yep, yep, yeah. I agree with all that, but yeah, it's telling me to, yeah, that's talking to me, because it talks about children of God, and there's a sort of a double standard, because I was always talking about a child of God when I was a witness, sort of like, not always, but to the end I was, and people in the congregation started to use that term. That yeah, we're children of God, but that seems to be only an anointed term, for the anointed, that
Mhm.
they will be, yeah, the children of God, and then all the other 99.9 witnesses are friends of God.
Right.
That's how they label it. You're a friend of God, but yeah, I started using that term, how we can be children of God and things like that, in the more generic, in the more general, broad space. So one of the other topics I had was, what was Acts 1:24? Who were the apostles praying to? You're smiling.
Mhm.
And I wrote an article on that. So because when I looked at it, and I was starting to look into the Greek as well, and I thought the apostles are praying to Jesus here. And so I looked at the way that Stephen prayed when he was being martyred. He called out to Lord Jesus. He said, "Lord Jesus, receive my spirit." And I thought, that's a prayer.
So,
See, the New World Translation doesn't render it as, he prayed or he called out. I can't remember how they render it now.
he called out or something.
Yeah, but I looked at the 1984 version, in the reference version, and it got little asterisks. And they still got it in the 1984 version of the reference one. So it says, or prayed.
Of course. Or prayed.
Prayed.
Well, if he's
Yeah.
praying,
Or
Lord
intercession.
Jesus,
Yeah.
please, which is a prayer in the Old Testament, like,
Mm,
please God, the one
mm,
who's I can carry my entire existence to, who's going to nurture me and
mm,
carry me into the afterlife. I'm
mm,
calling on that being. Like, it should only be God. And if you're not
mm.
praying to something else, some creature, why would you do that? That would be
Mm.
blasphemy.
Yeah.
And yet that's what he did. That's what
Yeah.
Stephen, Lord Jesus, receive this. And yet it's not, they don't look at that as prayer. And you've
No.
got blinders on at that point where you just don't want to see it. And it's blank to you
Mm,
anyway.
yeah. Anyway, I saw it of how it was, and so I did this article. I wrote this article on it, and then I read it back to an elder, because I said, I'm not saying that we should pray to Jesus. I did preface it a little bit, so I didn't get too told off. I'm not saying that we should do this. I'm just saying what the conclusion I came to from after doing my research on this. I'm not saying you should or shouldn't do it or whatever, or if they were doing it or not, but I came in the fact, the conclusion I came to was that the apostles and Stephen, they were praying to God, to Jesus. And we have all those who call on the name of the Lord, or
Mhm.
all those who call on Jesus Christ, be saved.
Yep.
Because they render that in what's it, in Romans 13, 10:13, where
Mhm.
everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved.
Yep. And then in
Um,
First Corinthians 1:2, he says, all those who call on the name of the Lord, and then says
yeah,
Jesus. And
yeah,
he
and
attaches Jesus onto it. Yeah.
in Romans, they render that everyone who calls on the name of Jehovah.
Right.
After, in context, it's all talking about Jesus.
Right. You can't get away from that one.
No, you can't
That's
get away with that. And so I started questioning the way that New World Translation translates Lord, as Jehovah in certain places, like 234 places.
Mhm.
So I started questioning that, and after that article, I would not touch the New World Translation. I just wouldn't do it.
Nice.
So I would be, yeah, like I said, I'd be reading the ESV, and they started noticing that I was reading the ESV. And eventually, well, I got onto a bit where I was getting more and more anxious, because I knew they were going to come for me. And I was saying to May, I'm going to get disfellowshipped
Hmm.
at this rate. And she said, no, you won't. You just, if it's true, it's true. She said, do you believe what you're saying? What you're telling me and things like this and what you're learning. Do you believe that's the truth? And I said, yes. She said, what's the problem then?
Hmm.
She's very practical.
I like May.
Yeah, so she's, there should be no problem. Just say it. You won't get into trouble for it. Yeah, but I'd read the elders manual.
Yeah.
She hadn't. So yeah, so I'd already read the elders manual because we'd looked at the Australian Royal Commission, and that was bothering us as well. That started bothering us.
Yeah, not.
Yeah, that was for May. That was the thing. That was it.
Yeah, I was going to actually ask,
her.
what was her main,
Yeah.
like, this is my one moment where I go,
Yeah.
nope, it's not,
Yeah.
because of, yeah.
So for my last moment in the JWs, we were doing the Revelation. We were doing 3 articles on the Revelation back in 2022, and I wasn't answering up for the first 2 because I knew it was winding me up, because everything it was just BS. I'm trying
Lack of a better word.
Yeah. It was getting to me that big time. And previously, a week or 2 before that, I had an incident where my doctor thought I had a heart attack. And so I had to go to the hospital, and it all turned out it was stress related. And so the elders came in all nicey, and because I had to go instantly, I asked one of the elders to come and sort of check on May, and he came in with his wife, and because she couldn't go to the toilet, she had a commode and she would use that. And I thought they might empty it, but they didn't. And so when I got back at 12 o'clock at night, I had to empty it. But they didn't do anything to really help. So I was really worried about her at that time. But they came in and said, are you all right? Do you need help with May? All this sort of thing. Do you need the carers to come in? Have you thought about asking the carers to come in again? Because I did have them before. And I said, May is not the source of my stress. May has never been the source of my stress. And I left it at that.
Awesome.
Yeah. And so we came to the last study on the Revelation, and we were talking about Revelations, talking about a bit about the rapture, which I believe that the witnesses have sort of like a partial rapture thing going on. I call it a partial rapture theory.
About right.
Yeah. My own words for it. And I used the most stupidest arguments to argue. Well, it wasn't the stupidest arguments to argue against it. It's the stupidest point to get all worked up about, because I thought, what's the easiest one to say this is bunk? And it was Matthew 24:31 to 33 or something like that. It was, but they used a scripture about Jesus coming back, and then about the time of the rapture, they said it was happened mid-trib, and what they don't use these words, sorry, but
no, they don't. Yeah, let's say.
Yeah. Sorry. That mid-trib tribulation, and the Lord will take all the anointed up to heaven, and then Armageddon will happen at the end of the tribulation, and they'll all come back and they'll be able to fight, be superheroes and all that sort of thing. And what I said was that the Watchtower is contradicting the Bible. I said this in the congregation. I said, in context, when the Lord comes back, he says after the tribulation. And so for me, what I got out of that was after the tribulation, the Lord comes and raptures the church, takes the church up, all the church, one hope, one baptism, everyone. And they didn't like that.
Mm-hmm.
You could hear a pin drop. That way. And then so he asked the question again, and somebody came in and gave the right answer. That was in the paragraph. But because I could have chosen any one of those things, and I just chose that one because it wasn't a great one to fall out over. If you know.
That's what you felt at the moment. You're like, no, I need to hit this.
Yeah. Because I could have chosen because they were talking about Revelation 7 verse 9. I could have chosen that, saying that we're all in heaven actually. But I didn't. I chose that one instead. And so after that, I gave my answer. I went round and sat next to May on the bed, and I said, they're coming for me.
Oh, man.
6 days later, they came for me. I had an elders meeting. 2 more elders came, and they said, we would like to talk to you. And they did it on Zoom. So I covertly recorded them. I put it up on on YouTube as well.
Oh, I'll have to check that out.
Yeah. I haven't done anything on my channel for over a year for reasons, which I'll talk about in a minute. But I put my my question answer, the question that got me into trouble up on the internet, and then I put in their talk afterwards as well, what they came to me for. And they came in all sort of like, oh, are you all right, Shaun? Is there anything, troubling, anything, wrong or anything? I said, no. And he said, well, we're a bit concerned. There were concern in the congregation about your answer. And I said, what was that? Sort of thing. Yeah. So we wanted to know what you meant. I said, it's pretty obvious what I meant.
Read the Bible. That's what I meant.
I wasn't being covert about anything.
Did I stutter?
I wasn't being ambiguous in any way. I said what I meant, and I read it from the Bible, and I said, well, this is what I said, look, I've got the Bible out again, and I said, look, this is what it says in the Bible. He said, we don't want to read it from the Bible.
Oh, he said that. He said
something
verbatim,
like that. Yeah.
I don't.
We don't want to read. We don't want to sort of read it. So I read it anyway, and I reiterated what I said about it, and so that should have lasted half an hour, but it lasted almost an hour in the end, to the point where he was all being nicey to begin with, but then the tone changed, and May was watching people that. One of the persons that she knew for 50 years change. She saw what it was like starting on the judicial case sort of thing. So this became my third and final warning of causing dissension in the church. In the congregation.
For anybody who listening, who thinks that maybe this is how the churches of Christendom operate, no way, not in any way. I could have a disagreement on a range of topics for people that are in my church, whether it be the pastor, assistant pastor, all kinds of people. And it would be totally fine. We would sit there, we pull out scripture, and we have groups on just people that will disagree, but they're all the non-essential issues. It doesn't matter if it's pre-trib, post-trib, if I'm a millennial, it doesn't matter. No one cares. Hey, God wins in the end. And we all laugh about that. We go, yeah, we have disagreements, but we know God wins in the end. Okay. And that's it. And for this to be, no, you're kicked out of this group, this church, God's one church, because you disagree with this non-essential that has nothing to do with your salvation or who God is, just our leader's interpretation, and who to be kicked out over that is not just nonsense. It's a practice of evil. Of you will obey our interpretation and no one else's, and it frustrates me, and I bet it really frustrates you more. But to anyone listening thinking that's how churches operate, they don't. And if they do, leave that church, because it's not a true one. But yeah, keep going.
Right. Yeah, and so May actually piped up. She got pretty frustrated. She said to the one taking the lead, Neil, his name. I'm going to out him.
Go on, Neil, in case you didn't hear
Neil. No, Neil. No, I don't hold any malice to the witnesses.
Yeah, and nor should anyone. They're victims, and we need to treat them as victims.
I don't hold any grudges or anything like that. And Neil, she saw the way he changed through the meeting, but she said, I don't see why you can't see what Shaun's saying, because I was bringing up things about I started because we'd prayed about it beforehand, so we prayed for the Holy Spirit to guide us, and so I brought up other issues as well about the New World Translation inserting words where they shouldn't be, in that aren't in the Greek text, like where you translate Lord into Jehovah. I didn't do John 1:1 on them.
Tempting.
But I'd already gone down that line of reasoning. He basically said, if the governing body have decided this is how it should be put in there, then it should be put in there. Or if it's been put in there too many times, then Jehovah will sort things out, or you've got to wait, you've got to wait on Jehovah. And I got fed up waiting, sort of thing, because nothing was happening, and I was under the impression, like a year before, that we could reform. Ha ha ha. That we needed reform, that Jehovah's Witnesses, well, they do need reform in lots of different ways.
And it's to stop almost everything they believe in. But
yeah, that's right. And so he got very adversarial on me, and May saw that, and she said, I don't like him. And so that was on the Saturday, and on the Sunday we had a convention part to watch online. So we did that, and on came a governing body member, and she looked at him and she shouted at the TV screen, "Hypocrite!" And I turned it off. I said, "Do you want to continue watching this?" She said, "No."
I love it.
And she said, "I'm done with this lot."
Oh, that was it. It was like, I'm done. I don't want any more parts of it.
Because she knew about the cover-ups of the she started to understand the cover-ups of CSA, and that disturbed us very much, because she had been a victim of CSA, not by the witnesses though. And so that was really something that really shook her. And she said, I don't want to go to a meeting anymore. And I'm done with this, I'm just done with them. And I said, you do know what this will mean, don't you? I said, we're going to lose all our friends. And we can do it one of three ways. We can continue on going to the meetings and I get disfellowshipped, or we can try and fade, or we can write a letter. And she said, can we fade? I said, they won't let us. I know they won't let us. because of how vocal I've been.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so she said, write the letter. And so I wrote a letter, which takes about 20 minutes to read. It's a short-ish letter.
So when was this? It was still in 2020?
This was 2022. So this
Okay.
was the August, well, end of July 2020.
So you're 2022.
So yeah, 2022.
So about a year ago now.
Yeah, so I wrote a letter saying we don't want anything to do with, we want to take our membership off the Jehovah's Witnesses associated with the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society. And so I labeled certain things out about the Lord's Supper. Can't remember exactly everything it was, but it was to do with the Lord's Supper I wrote about. And it was the United Nations, the CSA, and also the downgrading of Jesus as well. Because what got me most of all was they've been downgrading Jesus. And I was saying that to May over like last year and a half before we came out. I said, they're downgrading Jesus. It's annoying me, and they're upgrading the governing body, because there's one talk that was given by Stephen Lett was that they would be in heaven dispensing the ransom, and they would be able to read hearts.
That was about a year and a half ago or so.
That came out, and that bothered me.
It bothered me. I bet it bothered you even more.
And I was thinking, there's only one person that, only God can read the hearts.
Only God reads the hearts. I think that's it's in First Kings, and it's Jesus who reads the hearts, and Revelation chapter 2:23. It's all over the place. Only God can do that. Only God is our mediator. Only God is the source of our salvation. Of course, it says Jesus is too. But it's when that came out, and I'm still going to do some content on that, because the audacity of that statement, that these 8, 9, 10, however many there are now, men have control over the 8 billion people, that somehow they're going to, like, this is crazy. This is what every high control group does, is they elevate themselves and they demote Christ every single time without fail.
I've come to learn that recently. So what we did was that we said, right, we wrote the letter and had done with it. And so that's it. We put the letter in on the Thursday for the meeting. And I sent the letter electronically as well to all the elders, as much the elders I had on my phone. And one elder just completely blocked us straight away. And May, on the Monday, she sent a letter. She sent a text to Neil. She said, "I don't think you know as much as you think you know," sort of thing. And he blocked her straight away.
Oh man.
That's before we put the letter in, by the way.
May is a trip.
He's an elder, by the way. A shepherd.
A shepherd,
when the letter wouldn't have got written out, but we were announced to being no longer Jehovah's Witnesses. So that's basically what you get nowadays. You used to get they're disassociated or they've been disfellowshipped. Now it's just a generic one. So no one knows if you've been disfellowshipped or disassociated. And this is now publicly saying we were disassociated, not disfellowshipped for anything. May wanted control. And I agreed with her. We to have control over the situation and not let them control the situation. Because we felt that Christ was leading us in that way, to be in control and to make that stand and to make that declaration of faith. And so afterwards she said, "What do we do now?" So now we're out, and her friend that she'd known for 50 years blocked her straight away. Doesn't talk to her at all, doesn't even say anything. And so she cried for half a day, literally cried for half a day. And after that half day, she said, I'm okay now. You know, she just had to get it out of her system.
Yeah.
And so, you know, just turn it back. And so we started reading theology. We started reading lots of other books. We started reading the Bible. The New Testament, we've been reading, we read through a couple of times. And so, because I'd accepted the Trinity very quickly, she said, what do we believe about the Trinity now? And I said, well, I think the Bible teaches the Trinity. You know, I can see it there. And she said, I'm not too sure. Anyway, we were reading through, and we were reading Peter, one of the epistles of Peter, and it says that where it mentions that Jesus being God.
Yeah, Second Peter.
Yeah, she said, he just called Jesus God. I said, he did. I said, he did, didn't he? He said, yeah. And so we left it there. You know, it's just and then she completely accepted Jesus as being God, you know.
Oh, that's amazing.
So she'd been incredibly great, you know, in that way. But she got to a point where we were living, she said, I don't want to live here anymore, you know. I want to get away from this area. So somewhere where we didn't know witnesses, who didn't know us. We could start from afresh.
Why not?
And so
never too late.
We moved 80 miles basically to the north to England, because we were down south-ish. And when we moved in, we were still studying theology, but May was getting iller and iller, to the point where she was fast-tracked for end of life. And I'd actually had to put everything on hold on my YouTube channel, because coming out the witnesses had actually done me in. I was theologically burnt out, and I just needed time. So I had forgotten, actually, while I was a witness, I was talking to the Baptist minister on Zoom for weeks, because so we're backtracked now. Yeah. So before came out with the witnesses, I actually went to the Baptist church, wouldn't go inside it, but I talked to someone outside, and I was literally shaking like this, you know. It was incredible. I was really scared of being there, and I just gave him my text, my phone number, and he texted me surreptitiously and said, would you like a Zoom meet? And I said, yeah. And so we started talking, and we did a lot of theology. And so when we came out, I said to May, we've got to associate with Christians. You know, can't just do it on our own. She was happy to be on her own. I'm quite happy to be on her own. You know, but I said, I think it's good to associate as well with other Christians, you know. And so I said, we don't have to, you know, we can hop about the place and see if we like this place or we like that place, you know. Does this place suit us? Are we happy here? You know, we don't have to commit to anything, you know, in any way. I said, you know, and we can take our time. And so we went on to Zoom meetings. We went on to the Brian Pickett's Zoom meeting. But May and I weren't, it's okay, but May and I weren't very happy there. She didn't like it. She felt it was too much like witnessy.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Yeah. And so mainly because they don't believe in the Trinity, I do. And so I had a theological problem with them straight away. They're very much Unitarian. But time will tell. I don't know. because it's one of the the theology problems that witnesses have is the Trinity. I think that's one of the last things for me. It's very quickly I accepted it, but for a lot it can take years and years and years. It all depends. A lot of time it can be because you've been growing up in the witnesses or whatever. May and I had an advantage of not being brought up in witness environments, and exposed to the Trinity beforehand.
Right.
So we were hopping about, and we went down to the Baptist church, and we sort of liked it there. It was nice. She would tell the minister sometimes if she didn't like it. I like May.
I do too.
But we had the minister was sort of saying, because they had a baptism there, if anyone wants to get baptized, let me know. And I said, I want to be baptized.
Awesome.
And because I thought, I didn't feel that my baptism was right, even though I thought I was accepted by the Lord because of my experience that I had. That's why I told it, way back. But I wanted baptism because I remember what the vows were, and one of the elders on the meeting said, well, you accepted, your baptism was that you got baptized in association with the witnesses, whatever it was. And I said, yeah, it sort of bothers me a bit. I said, were you baptized with that baptism? And he said, no. I said, well, I think you need to be rebaptized then, so yeah. Because they didn't always do that. It was only about 1980, mid 1980s, when they changed the baptism vows, and it became that you got baptized in association with the Spirit directed organization.
Yeah.
And they dropped the Spirit one now, so it's now in association with the organization.
Yeah, it'll be different in 2 years. So
yeah.
Just wait.
But yeah, so I said to my pastor, I said, I want to get baptized. And so I did. So I got baptized last November.
Oh,
so it's a bit chilly.
Congratulations. Awesome.
Yeah. And then we moved, and we were able to move into our bungalow about February this year. And that's when May got really ill, and then she went into the end of life. And then 3 weeks, as soon as she went into end of life, 3 weeks, she passed away. So I was holding her. I was woken up with the feeling that she had died about 5 a.m, and I'd gone into her. I called the because I'd been reading lots of Bible to her, and she breathing was bad, and I called the nurses out. Once they came, they said she hasn't got long. I was holding her hand while she took her last breath. And so yeah, I was with her when she died. So I was really pleased to being able to be there, so and so a couple of weeks ago we had a funeral. I invited the witnesses.
Can't imagine many showed up.
Had one show up.
All right, good.
She didn't know we'd left.
Oh man.
She realized at the end of it, after I gave him the eulogy, and after Martin from the Baptist Church had done the committal. So because I asked him to preach on John 14, 14, I think it was. And so he done that for me, and so I was really pleased that he did that. And so yeah, and so now I'm just sort of recovering from all the ordeal of the witnesses and losing May. And I'm thinking I'm going to get back onto my YouTube channel. a few videos up there, but I haven't done anything for almost a year now. So, but people lovingly keep subscribing to it.
There you go. That's good.
So yeah, I've got over 1,000 subscribers on that now.
All right. And what's the channel? I'll put a link in the description below, but go ahead.
Let Your Light Shine.
Okay. I think I know this one. Yes. There's so many witness channels, so they kind of
Yeah.
but
yeah. I've done a parody bit on there as well. So there's, and I've done a testimonial on grace as well, because I got a bit emotional with that one.
Do you still have your blog?
I haven't done anything since the Lord's Supper, so that's 2022 still.
Yeah, I think it's just fascinating, like that story, because you start like, I'm just going to put up, just blanket Bible information, but I'm a witness. I believe witnesses are true. And then slowly, as you're getting into scripture more and more, your mind's being changed and God's renewing your entire thought process. And it's getting more and more in line with what scripture actually teaches. And by the end of it, you're like, yes, you should take the elements. So like first blog post, no, we should. And last one, yes, we should. And that all comes from just reading the Bible. Like, that's what I tell so many. Just please read your Bible and it will change your entire life.
Nothing substitutes reading the word.
Exactly.
And so like tonight, since May died, I've connected with a church down here where I live now, which I'm not telling where it is, by the way.
That's fine.
Because I witnessed to the witnesses here.
I like it.
Yeah. So I've been sort of hopping around churches around here, but I've sort of been gravitating towards the Baptist church here. It's a nice bunch. We have a men's group for Bible study on Mondays, which I've been attending, so I was there today, and we've been going through the Gospel of John, which is really good. And I'm struggling at church at the moment with it all because of still witnessy, takeouts of it all. But because I've been to the Pentecostal church as well.
Oh wow, yeah, that's a whole other experience.
Yeah, that is. Yeah, the minister said to me, "What did you think of it?" I said it was loud.
That's one example. Because
I couldn't hear myself in the music. I do. I'm sort of. I like with a friend of mine. I said, "Look, I'm open about things now, and I'm up for discussion about certain things, like the gifts of the Spirit, things like that. I'm not saying they've ceased. I'm not saying they're all like what some charismatic preachers show, because there's one YouTube channel that's helped me as well, which is what's it, Bible Thinker?
Yeah, he's great.
He's charismatic.
Yes, he is.
And I didn't think he was. I didn't realize. But it just goes to show there's this spectrum of it all.
Yeah, Mike Winger, that's what you're referring to, right? He's great. Really, I know some people that know him. I haven't met him yet, but it's on my list of trying to.
So one of the things that I read through with May before she died, and she was able to understand things, was The Unseen Realm by Michael Heiser.
Yeah.
So I've been reading Michael Heiser. I listened to a lot of his podcasts as well.
Just passed away, but good man, good smart man. He knew what was up.
Yeah. I feel really blessed by the what he's brought out and all that, because he brings out in The Unseen Realm about the Trinity as well. So and you can see it in the Old Testament. That's the thing.
Yeah, you can. He does a good job pulling it out from there.
So I still listen to a lot of that. I listen to your stuff.
Oh, appreciate that. Yeah.
I am subscribed, by the way.
I appreciate that. Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, but
So
yeah,
the kids, are they still well, they were never witnesses, or were they
no,
in
one was, well, so before May died, she had reconciled with her daughter. They didn't have long together, but I'm really pleased that she'd reconciled.
that's good.
With her son, she had 5 children, but 3 had died, sadly, you know. And the son didn't want anything to do with her
Mm,
anymore. Well, you know, we have to accept, you know, he's had a lot of problems
okay.
because of it all.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So we accepted that. And with May's daughter, it was nice what she had got back from all that. And the thing was, when May got really ill here as well, she got really anemic, really badly anemic, and they wanted to give her a blood transfusion. And so May said, "What do we feel about blood transfusions now?" She said, you know, we can't really take them, can I?" I said, "Well, let's have a look. Let's listen to a YouTube, you know, a YouTube talk on it." And so we listened to Mike Winger's rebuttal on witnesses and about blood transfusions. And after that, she saw the logic of being able to take a blood transfusion, and she accepted that.
Good.
She had the blood transfusion, and then but afterwards she said, "Don't make me do that again," because it was arduous, you know.
Yeah, I bet.
She was tired, she was exhausted, she was ready to go home.
Hmm.
And all she wanted to do was go home
Hmm.
now. And she said to me, "You've got to let me go," she said. So we did all the respect forms and things where she'd be cared for at home, and they took her off a load of drugs to you know, to that weren't necessary anymore, because of her decisions. And yeah, so she got iller and iller. Just before one of the last words before she was asking what happens next. So we'd read a book called Case for Heaven, and we'd read about Holy Spirit, and she believed that she was going to go with the Lord, be with the Lord. When we read through Corinthians as well, where Paul says to be away from the bodies, to be with the Lord, you know.
Exactly.
And so, because we talked about Sheol, like with Michael Heiser, who talked about the compartments of Sheol, and also and with First Book of Enoch, which she said, when it was referenced, she said, "What's that book?" And I said, "Well, it's sort of mentioned in two of the New Testament." She said, "But we've not read it, have we?" I said, "I've read it." She said, "Why didn't you read it to me?" So we read through
Explain
the
yourself.
yeah, so we read through the First Book of Enoch. So and so yeah, to see what it was like.
It's I like what you said earlier about, you know, in church and you're struggling.
Mm,
It's because it takes years.
mm,
Of course I was never a witness, but I've talked to enough now that it's, you know, being out 3, 4, or 5 years, it's just slowly removing the garbage one by one by one.
mm,
And it just takes time to really
mm,
deprogram yourself. Uh,
yeah.
and even though, you know, like, hey, I'm awake, I know this is nonsense, but it still hits you in the back of the head, like, well, no, I've got to remind myself that's not true, and I got to go to scripture over and over and over again.
Mm,
But eventually it does filter itself, just keep
it
washing it
does.
through with the Bible, and eventually
Yeah,
it cleans
yeah.
itself out. But it's a process. And my hope for you in this is just stay strong. You know, God's
Mm,
got you. He's going to lead
mm,
you through it. And he's gonna, renew your mind. It's gonna be a slow process, but he'll do it. And you seem to be a pretty quick learner. So
Yeah.
well, it might take some people 5 years, it'll take you 2.5. Yeah.
Yeah.
Three
Well,
tops.
I had to go on a sabbatical.
Yeah.
Yeah, because my mentor that was helping me a lot, he was really worried about my mental health because of it all, because he'd done counseling. So I've had to take a seat back and just sort of get to know people, get to know friends, make new friends.
Yeah.
That's what I'm doing, and finding my way and in church, and just accepting people the way they worship. So it feels very strange and awkward still for me, but that will eventually wear off.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It will, and you gotta. I'm not saying you have to believe that. But enough testimonies of listening to people like yourself. Like it is going to happen, and in God will lead you to the right church. And I'm not sure what the one you're at is like, but that might just be a hold me over. You never know. And that's the thing. Like life changes so quick, and God has so many insane plans for us that we can't even fathom what they are. So you got to think. I mean, 3 years ago. I mean, well, maybe maybe 4 years ago, you're still witness, and now you're not. Now
Yeah,
you're out there talking against them, and I seriously doubt that ever went through your head like, oh,
yeah,
and as a couple of years, I could just be
yeah.
having a YouTube channel to blog against them. Like
That's right.
yeah. So who knows what you are 3 or 4 years
That's
from
right.
now, and yeah.
I wish I was a fly on the wall at the Kingdom Hall when they did the announcement.
Yeah, it's one of those things where
Yeah.
and into that, to any witnesses, we're not wishing bad on these people. Like, oh, I
No.
can't believe it's their victim. They don't know any better. And all
No.
these
That's
elders that
right.
did that to you, they're really coming. They think they're doing what God wants them to do. They honestly believe that. At least I hope they honestly think that.
Yeah.
And yeah, they need love. They need
They
this.
do.
Yeah, and
Yes.
and I don't want to come ever at it as from a point of hate. Oh, I hate these people for what they did to you. And look, what they did to you is crappy and it's terrible. But they're like, you have to love our enemies, and we're going to call them our enemies. Well, yes, because they do speak a false gospel, but we have to love everything. They're made in the image of God, and we don't have to love their ideas, obviously, but we have to love them as people and image bearers of God. And it's tough because they've caused so much damage to so many families. But we were all you've been there, like, you've believed things you were part of that. And I've been against God too. And we're all sinners. So don't
That's
ever want to
right.
put
Yeah.
ourselves above a certain level and say, well, I'm
Yeah.
better than them. No, we want to beat our chests and always look to God.
Yeah. I think that's one of the things that I've had to learn is I'm allowed to give myself permission to read a book or read this all different things, because I came across very early in my journey when I was a witness, I came across the Logos Bible software. So I sort of, I got onto that straight away, and I thought, so this is a better, because one of the things that the witness leadership boast about is their app. And I went on the Logos Bible software, and this is way cooler.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, JW.org does a decent job, but yeah, Logos is better scholar, better research.
This is way cooler. I can search Greek words.
Yeah, can't do that on. Yeah, weird
No, you
how they
can't.
limit you.
Yeah, and I can search Hebrew words and get all the lemmas up on it. So
yeah, I don't think.
search
Correct me if I'm
everywhere.
wrong, but I don't think JW.org has a Hebrew interlinear at all. I
No,
think it's
no, they
yeah,
don't.
it's just the kingdom, just the Greek one.
Yeah, it's just the Kingdom interlinear.
That's one thing I want to do is go through, because in the Greek it's pretty easy to see the New World Translation's errors, but to go through the Old Testament and look through there as well.
I've done some of the study on the Old Testament. I've done where they translate Adonai, when they translate it, how do they translate it every time? So there was like 700 odd times when it's in the Hebrew scriptures, and I looked up every single one of those, and about 132 instances they translate Adonai as Jehovah.
That's changing the words of scripture.
They don't just do it in the New Testament.
I actually didn't know
Surprise,
that.
surprise.
I have to
Yeah,
look into that because my
yeah.
focus is mainly in the New Testament. But
I can
I guess
send you the spreadsheet if you want.
yeah,
Like,
absolutely. Man, Shaun, it has been
yeah.
your story is just it's inspiring. One,
Mm,
it's amazing that you've
mm.
had this this whole huge experience with it. There's just some of the strange stories go along with it, but just that moment of I started reading the Bible and I love it. It
Yeah, that's
wasn't
it.
the Australian Royal Commission. Well, granted, that's wrong and it's terrible
Yeah.
and it opens a lot of people's eyes. Great, but
Mm,
it was I loved
words.
God through the whole thing, through the
Mm.
whole adventure, this whole journey. I still had a love for God and wanted to know Him, and then I started really reading the Bible. Did you ever have a moment where you were like, how come I've never read Acts before? Like, did it ever
Yeah,
dawn on
that's
you,
right.
like,
Yeah.
and not like
Yeah.
insulting, but yeah, did you actually even think that, like, how come I never
Yeah.
just went into this for
Well,
30
why
years?
didn't I see this? What's stopping me seeing this? And
Mm,
it was what I would say is the spirit of blindness that witnesses have. They have what you could describe as that veil over the face.
mm,
Every time the law of Moses is read, the veil is over.
yeah.
So that's what happens, and it's then the devil can keep blinding them.
Yeah. So if you could say
Um,
anything to kind of like not just witnesses, but especially ex-witnesses, people dealing with the same position you have, what would be some like words of advice?
take your time
Hmm.
and look into it, because I know there's witnesses that are what's the word, um, in still but don't believe it, or they might also have faith in Christ and believe in Christ, but they are stuck. And I'm not going to say that they should get out or not get out. That's not up to for anyone to say when they're in that position. That's their walk with Christ, really, because we don't know. When I'm talking to witnesses, I don't know if they've got faith alone in what Christ did on the cross. Now, if they believe that and they no other works come into it, so it's not a works-based thing, then we don't know who is saved. That's with the Lord. So I would say take your time, don't rush, look into things, give yourself permission to read other non-witness literature that comes from Christendom, as in that terms, Christian books, good scholars like Michael Heiser, and there's, I would say,
Yeah, we got
give
any
yourself permission
recommend?
to do,
Yeah, I
on
recommend
Trinity.
that. Great,
Yeah,
great book.
yeah.
Absolutely.
And listen to the podcast as well, because if you're in a home and you're the only one that's sort of waking up or woken up, it's going to be really difficult, which means that you've got to be kind to your spouse. You've got to be very gentle with your spouse, and it's going to cause great stress. I was blessed with a godly woman, put it that way, and not everyone has that position where my wife loved me and Christ more than the
Hmm.
governing body.
Love it.
You know, so if you're in a marriage now that is divided, just take your time, just be gentle, and just you know talk about things. If you've really got a relationship that is a what's the word, a best friend relationship, and I know not all marriages do, but May and I had a best friend relationship. We told everything to each other.
Hmm.
So if you've got that, that's good to have that communication going and to just reassure your spouse that you love them. because that's the one thing I did with May, was I really emphasized how much I loved her, how much she meant to me. But I love Christ more than the organization. You know, and what I was learning was that, you know, it was difficult for us for quite a while, you know, and I thought I might lose her, but I was willing to stay in the witnesses just because of her, even though I might believe something different. But she was sort of like a fast sort of learner like me, you know. But so yeah, just be gentle, be kind to yourself. Don't feel that you have to rush. That's the thing. And give yourself permission to research the organization. Go back to the old PDFs that are available online. They're available from my other website as well. I've got all the PDFs, Watchtower PDFs going back to 1879.
Nice.
So that can be got at jwarchive.org.
Oh, yes, very familiar. Yeah, I will put that link in the description. I've been there many times, sir. Many times.
Have you?
Oh, yeah. I didn't know you ran that. This is blowing my mind right now.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I've been slowly digitalizing the
wow
magazines as well.
You have no idea how much of a help you've been. I wanted to come in this completely genuine and say, I don't know anything about Shaun. I don't know what's up. He just wanted to share a story. And here you are going, oh, yeah, that guy, the resource you've been using for years. That was me. What? Yeah, check that out. Definitely, because it's awesome, especially if you're going to use this for apologetics. Just doing research. It's not apostate content. It's not been edited. I'm just going to come out and say and trust you on that. This is
it's not been edited.
Right. This is legitimate articles, and people, you got to. I mean, those are all great, but definitely read your Bible more, because that's going to lead you to.
And one of the things is that do check out those older articles that Millions Now Live and Will Never Die. The Finished Mystery is another good one. And the Two Worlds, which was one of the first books. C.T. Russell didn't write it, but it was collaborated with Barbara, I think it was. And that was in so that's a good one as well, because it shows up all the wacky things that was going on back then, and also the date setting that was going on. So you will see all that in those old articles, because jw.org won't let you go back any further than the 1950s.
No, it will not. And
but they do have all the articles, all the books online on that library, but it's filtered behind you've got to be a Bethelite to be able to, and not just any Bethelite, but you've got to be up.
You got to be way up on the I thought all things were open before God, and yet I guess they're keeping their books back.
See, when I came out, and once I got into looking at different theological articles and things, I realized that everything's out in the open in Christian circles.
As well it should be. I read things from Athanasius. I read things from Martin Luther. You can read everything for all the popes. All of it is easily accessible.
Well, I read the Didache to May.
Yeah. Okay, good. Yeah. Interesting. I taught on that last week. Shaun, great talk.
Thank you.
This was amazing. People, go subscribe to Shaun, show him your support. Because that'd be awesome to build his channel as well. And check out the website. All the links will be in the description below. So go there, enjoy, read to your heart's content. Shaun, you are amazing. What you've been through melts my heart. And I'm going to have people praying for you, supporting you. Anything you need, you have a community of people behind you. So it's been great. I hope you had fun too.
Yeah, I did actually. Yeah, like you said, time goes really quickly when you.
Yeah, didn't expect to be this long, but
one of my friends said, "Does he know that you just talk?"
That's fine. I wanted you to just talk, so this is good.
Yeah.
All right. All right, everyone. Thanks for watching. Appreciate it, Shaun. Thank you again. And God bless.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.